Welcome to our 70th podcast. Today we'll be talking about embracing innovation and growing your voice as a thought leader with our very special guest, Mike Palmer. What's one thing you can do now to distinguish your voice and promote your purpose as a thought leader? Keep listening to find out.
Welcome to Harmonious Workplaces, a podcast about corporate culture, organizational change management, and workplace behavior. Harmonious Workplaces was started by independent consultants Rich Cruz, Ben Kleinman, and Cheryl Volpe to explore, challenge, and build on various organizational culture and change management concepts. It's a blend of theory and practice based on their personal and professional experiences working with companies of all sizes across various industries. If you own a business, lead a team, want new ideas about the corporate environment, or just want to listen to a group of consultants talking about how to make work more enjoyable, we invite you to sit back, relax, and dive in with us to Harmonious Workplaces.
Hello, Harmonious Workplaces listeners. Welcome back to our podcast. As always, we're so glad to have you with us. I'm Rich Cruz, an organizational development consultant, and I'm joined today by my colleague and co-host and co-author and everything else Cheryl Volpe. How are you?
Great, Rich. Hi, everyone.
And we are also joined by our special guest, a longtime friend of Cheryl, Mike Palmer of Palmer Media. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm great. It's amazing to be on this side of things because I'm behind the mic on the more regular, so I'm kind of sitting in your seat normally. But congratulations on 70 is a big number. A lot of people pod fade. Y'all are pod thriving, which is the flip side of that.
Well, we try, but my mom and like 5 other people out there.
Hey,
thanks for keeping us in
gotta
business.
start somewhere.
And
Yeah.
Mike, you're up to 700. So
Yeah,
from you, that's a
700.
real compliment.
yeah, mind-boggling.
Yeah. So, Mike, could you just introduce yourself? Give us a little snapshot of where you're from and how you met Cheryl. That'd be an awesome story.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I met Cheryl when I was working at Kaplan, and Cheryl's husband at the time was our mutual friend at a minimum. And
He's still my husband. Just to clarify.
exactly. He's
Not
talk about thriving. I mean, he's living his best life. But
husband at the time, husband presently. Go ahead.
exactly. And we were hanging out in that was kind of like 20 years ago. So it was New York. I was Kaplan, kind of e-learning, innovation, building online learning products in the early 2000s, which was kind of a hidden golden age, I guess. We were able to do a lot of really cool stuff back then. So that's me in Kaplan. I spent 23 years there. Exited in 2019, right before the pandemic. My son was 1 at the time. Started my consultancy, Palmer Media, building on a lot of what I did at Kaplan,
Awesome.
which was, at the end, it was, digital media, innovation, how to use emerging media for a big brand. And then through that whole career path, there were plenty of shifts and pivots that I had to make to continue kind of climbing through the ranks at Kaplan. I started as a teacher and then wound up in curriculum development that evolved into e-learning, which ultimately wound up, digital media.
And you're still though, like you're still showing people and teaching people like what how to get their message across and all that. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my mom and dad were both teachers. My dad, in his 70s, started a radio show with a friend of his that was on the air out here on Long Island. But so my dad was always educating me and kind of messing with my head at the same time. And I feel like I still do that on podcasts. And then as a consultant, I don't mess with people as much, but unless they need it. But I mostly am just helping people understand how to use platforms like this, how to get your authentic voice together. Because I think a lot of people have a bit of an imposter syndrome when they're asked to kind of communicate something or put something out on LinkedIn. Suddenly people who typically take over the room become very timid because it's a tricky time to be saying something,
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
but it's almost a trickier time to be saying nothing,
Correct.
so.
So Mike, first of all, dads, it's kind of their job to mess with your head when you're, let them be
You know,
to do that. And
yes.
it sounds like it's sort of in your genes that you were always going to end up being behind the microphone in the studio. And if I can ask you, what was it about podcasting that emerged for you as a way to evolve through where you were coming from and where you were going?
Yeah. Great question. Because, I always liken it to Gods Must Be Crazy. So, like, I was working at Kaplan, vice president of digital media. Graham Holdings is the mothership, so the Graham family, formerly the Washington Post company, before they sold that slice to Bezos. Graham Holdings, still, Kaplan is probably the biggest property within that portfolio, but there's a bunch of different companies, including Slate. And Slate at the time, huge in podcasting, but they were relocating offices, and they bequeathed to me and Kaplan their Whisper booth, which
Oh.
just kind of appeared outside Whisper Room. I don't know if you've seen these little like hot boxes, that where you go in. It's the cone of silence from Get Smart, So like once you have that in your midst, you really have to use it. Like I feel like they probably would have fired me if I didn't start a podcast by that point. So yeah, and then that intimacy, which started in person mostly. My co-host Brandon Jones and I would be in the hot box, and then our producer was remoting in Zoom. So like starting in 2016. So like we've always been kind of testing out these models, but that was just an amazing opportunity for me to develop my own voice and then think about it. I've always been kind of like a sports guy. Think of it as like a team sport, and like not only am I scoring, but I'm distributing the ball, and then I've just got the 10,000 hours in. I've gotten the reps, which
Yeah.
makes
Right.
it much more. Things are much more intuitive to me, and then I also think you can get better at understanding tone and
Sure.
understanding kind of nonverbals and like the feelings in the room without saying things. And that's again, that's kind of future proof. I don't see the bots getting us on that one just yet.
And there's
But
there's
yeah,
no, there's no uncomfortable silences, right? Because except when they're analyzing, except when they say, "Give me a moment."
right. I mean, unless you want an uncomfortable silence, like I edit them out religiously. So like if you listen to my podcast, it's anodyne, like it's like, we're in Oz, but I think people frequently would like a little banter, a little back and forth. I do a sports podcast for kicks. Trending in Education is my flagship for Palmer Media. Folks should check it out, trendingined.com. It's conversations like this about the future of education, about future work in
Sure.
particular, which is really getting disrupted
Ooh.
nowadays. But but yeah, it's a fun podcast. But then running it back is more just a thing I do for fun with Tarlin Ray, a good friend of mine, and we disagree a lot, and probably not as much as we could. And I think people like to listen. There's actually a great podcast out called The Disagreement, which I don't know if you've heard of, but
Mm-mm.
it's actually they're an interesting startup uh, focused on rediscovering, reestablishing civic discourse, and so they have people who disagree on controversial topics like, you know, transphobia or, getting
Sure.
into more like DEI, like stuff that people are triggered by. And they try to have informed parties civilly debate the thing between each other.
Right.
And,
So it's not like a Dana Carvey SNL. What
oh,
was that? McNeil there
oh,
for
yeah.
where
Yeah, I mean,
wrong.
oh, right, the McLaughlin Group. Yeah,
The
no,
McLaughlin group. That's
yeah,
it. Yeah.
no. I mean, it's actually, and that's something that I do think podcasts are like. If you can engage in these types of conversations as a representative of your brand, you're gonna go far. Because
Yeah.
people are afraid. People are either afraid of stepping up to the mic, or they probably like it too much, and you have to kind of
Mhm.
thread the needle and figure out, it's not about you. but you might be able to really be a spokesperson. And then when it is you,
Well, this takes me back to when you were talking about your flagship podcast, where you talk about the future of education and you talk about the future of employment in that sector.
yeah,
I, for one, am glad that someone that I know who is respectable and operates with integrity and fact checking and truth is a standard bearer, such as you are, in that conversation, right?
hmm
And I'm
thank you.
I'm sure you are dancing on the razor's edge with how far do you go into the geopolitical climate with the whole
Yeah,
and the
hmm
current news, and then how do you keep the conversation in a meaningful space?
yeah. Have you heard of Bandolini's principle? I think I got that right.
Bandolini's
Bandolini's law. I think it's Bandolini, maybe Brandolini. We'll get our crack staff on that in a bit. But
right,
Yeah,
right.
sure.
We'll put that in the show
Yeah.
notes.
there's an AI that'll check this for us.
That's right.
But I think that's right. Where it's like, I don't know if you can swear on the show, but it's an okay swear. But it's like
Sure, go ahead.
it's
Go
like
ahead.
the amount of energy it takes to combat bullshit is an order of magnitude greater than what it takes to generate it in the first place. So I live by that, where like, don't shy too much away from the 600-pound gorillas in the room, but also don't let them take over the conversation. Like there's an opportunity cost that you spend every time you talk about the Voldemorts of the world. So like protect yourself and figure
Hmm.
out what's the return on that engagement. Like, are you going to be the crusader who's going to actually turn things here? Or are you going to be someone who's honestly a little more utilitarian, a little more transactional for your own benefit to say, if I go out there, I'm going there authentically, but do I actually want to go there right now? Because it's going to take an order of magnitude greater to kind of continue that conversation rather than to focus on something positive. So I try to recognize what's going on, but maybe not belabor it. And then I also feel I've been dragged into a lot of this stuff where like another podcast that I've started is for New College of Florida, which is my alma mater,
Cool.
which the DeSantis administration installed Chris Rufo and a couple of culture warriors onto our board of governors. I think so. Our board at New College, and basically tried to turn it into a much more conservative university, and
Mm.
basically play to kind of the national political climate because DeSantis wanted to get elected. So like, even if I try to steer clear of culture wars, I'm like Pacino in The Godfather 3. Like they keep sucking me back in. Like you kind of have to talk about this stuff. It's the reality that we live in. I mean the
Yeah.
Department of Education stuff that you're referencing, Cheryl, is really serious. Like people's jobs are on the line. I always think of it as, how can I be kind of a gamesman? The whole idea of gamesmanship. Like in terms
Hmm.
of my professional career, I'm a gamesman. Like everything's a game. It's a corporate system. They're all kind of game theory, can be applied to any system that you're in. It's a complex game.
Quest,
But
four-dimensional check.
yeah, and go in with your heads up. It's very psychological, sociological, the social sciences folks. I'm here to tell you, you can thrive within a corporate environment, but you have to kind of think about it almost from an anthropological understanding. This is a way in which humans are organizing. So that's why the stuff I have huge respect for the work that you guys do, just around trying to navigate the complexity of change. Humans aren't necessarily, we don't like change, and
Hmm.
we're in a world where change is hitting us constantly. So like the way people adapt is becoming kind of front and center to the types of skills that are going to be resilient and kind of lead the next 20 years of professional work.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting that you mentioned that because like we were just doing like Cheryl was saying before we started the podcast, I was doing some search engine optimization analysis, and search terms around change management, organizational change have gone up in the last year 900%,
Yeah.
which is just, it's staggering. So,
Yeah.
but let's do this because I'd love to talk more about innovation. And you said how organizations can thrive, in today's environment.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, let's dive into that a little more. All right. We'll be right back.
Meet Hermie the HR Hermit Crab. Laugh, learn, and lead better with Hermie. Hermie is here to tackle workplace madness with heart and humor from Harmonious Workplaces. He's perfect for HR pros, leaders, and change makers. Hermie teaches workplace lessons through cartoons and is great for team discussions and workshops. Get your copy on Amazon now. www.hermiehrhermitcrab.com. Again, that's hermiehrhermitcrab.com.
And we're back. So we've been talking with Mike Palmer of Palmer Media. And before we went to the break, we were going to talk a little bit about how organizations can thrive through change, and a little bit about innovation. And let's pick it up there.
And how the social scientists can thrive in this 4D chess.
Yeah.
It's with an anthropological approach.
Exactly. I mean, it's kind of like, don't you feel like we're on the enterprise, probably like next generation enterprise is kind of, that was always my work. I mean, Kaplan was a great culture. I stayed there 23 years. It kind of felt like that. It felt like you were on the enterprise. And if you're on the enterprise, how do you engage? This gets back to the whole game theory. But like, there's a level to which you're just a member of this culture and you want to kind of rise in status within the culture, and then think of it from like almost a primordial savannah kind of evolution where like we're groups who come together and there are ways in which we interact and lead and do whatever. I think if that's kind of like your root metaphor, and that was certainly mine, so it's kind of a mix. Maybe we're on the holodeck in the primordial savannah. Maybe that's what it is, but it's like, you got to engage, like the prime directive comes into play. Like there is a sense of like an ethos, like a kind of moral center, like an ethical way of operating to the organization. And you got to get a quick read on that. If you find it and it aligns with you, then you can probably thrive. And
even in that environment, though, how often was the prime directive smudged? There were unforeseeable circumstances where something as core and basic as that idea had to be compromised,
right,
or a variety of unforeseen factors by the wisest leader that we ever knew.
Right. Yeah, I mean, for me, what I really loved about Test Prep was that it was it was a retail educational product where you're trying to help people perform better. And the dirty little secret is you're going to make enough money by doing this that you'll be able to support yourself and grow. And, so like if you accept the fact that it's for-profit retail education, basically, I thought it was great because I think under that umbrella, there was a lot of good action. John Polstein was the CEO there the whole time I worked there, and I believed in his character. And then he worked for Andy Rosen, who was the CEO of Kaplan, and then Tim O'Shaughnessy, when I was there, was leading, still I believe leading Graham Holdings. They were all like great people. Like I mean, they had to make tough business decisions, but that's where like that's what I mean about Test Prep, where like it's almost a level of transactional operations that
like the holodeck can't fix itself. I mean, look, we have to consider there's a business to be run. So, and that's getting back to the point of how organizations can thrive.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a profit market, and believe it, our company is called Harmonious Workplaces. Now, if we don't tell a client the ROI at the end of that,
Right.
all well and good to have harmony.
Right.
Someone has to keep the lights on, right?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Yep.
change has happened. I mean, I'm not surprised to hear that change management is popping on SEO. Like that makes a lot of sense to me. People are scared, like we've been talking about this, AI overtaking humans, since Star Trek and before, but there's some sense of,
The
uh,
Borg. That's the Borg culture. Was that?
yeah, I mean,
That was.
absolutely the Borg. And the Borg is out there. I mean, if you think about it nowadays, like there is a level of conformity. And if you use these AI large language models, they tend to, I've heard them described as mid, which I think is hilarious because now I have a 6-year-old, so I have to start to keep up with the slang. But like what the AI puts out is a little bit middle of the road. Like you have to figure out how to get it to be interesting, how to get it to be creative, how to get it to like zig when it was expecting a zag. It's almost a
Mm,
measure.
mm,
It's a measure of central tendency. So like,
sure.
how do you get better at breaking with routines? How do you get better at being surprising, out of control? That's like the whole Regis Philbin from back in the day. But how do you get people? How do you earn people's attention by being surprising and bringing a little bit of narrative, a little bit of fun into what you're delivering?
Sure.
Because that's the other element of like retail education. It's a personality driven. Like Kaplan teachers, test prep teachers tend to be really interesting folks because they have to stand in front of the room and teach you math for the GRE for 3 hours. Like at least
Right.
back in the
Right.
day, like you had to kind of hold people's attention.
Sure. It's kind of going to the innovation side of things. It I find it interesting that all of this was it started in this retail for-profit environment, and you have the nonprofit institutions that have been like, oh, that's not a good education or whatever, but they're all adopting that technology
Yeah,
and the methodology and the pedagogy that goes. I mean,
totally. Yeah,
they're claiming it as their IP, and I'm like,
yeah,
this has been going on since for a while, right?
100%. I mean, Kevin Kelly, pretty famous. He was the editor in chief of Wired for many years, but like a tech journalist, writer, opinion guy. Uh, he uh, he talks. He wrote a book called Inevitable, and it was the 12 sort of forces around technology that are inevitable, and a lot of these innovations that folks are expecting, it's not a question of whether, it's a question of when. So like the
Mm,
level to which AI becoming relevant, we lived through an AI winter. Folks were more bullish about AI and then were so disappointed by a lot of the lack of traction in the early 21st century that there really was, since the 90s, like there was, people were calling it an AI winter where, things weren't really moving. And then, the paradigm shifted on a dime when the transformer technology, the T and the GPT really kind of kicked off. And that really opened up this renaissance that we're living in around AI. And that's what I mean about playing with your head up. That's why when I was at Kaplan, we started something about trends in education and kind of built that into our collective job description where like you're going to need to focus on trends in education and become an expert in it because you're doing a podcast as a skunk work, kind of low risk. Let's just toe in the water, test it as a big company. And I was thinking about that. Like, you almost need to build your individual flywheels. Like, where can you get yourself focused on something
mm,
in your job that will continue to add value, force you to be a lifelong learner? The stuff that I've learned, 700 conversations like this, these are incredible learning opportunities. Like you have access to people, and you're also like, you're all kind of coming in the best cases, coming in acting in good faith. So frequently it's like a less funny version of improv. Like I mean, it can be
Right.
funny if you're funny, uh, guests and interlocutors. I believe that's the word.
Wow.
Yeah,
Ah,
Kaplan runs deep,
woo,
Rich. I mean, like,
that is a word of the day kind
oh,
of
is it?
word
Did
of the
I
day
did I
calendar.
win
No,
something? Like what?
uh,
Oh,
they,
oh,
you
your respect. Yeah,
you
there you
can
go.
win. There you go. There you
Yeah,
go.
Priceless.
yeah,
Priceless.
yeah, yeah.
I do want to go back to this idea that people are arriving at work with good intentions, as you have said. And I think it's less about intentions and more about the engagement, right? This is something that we talk about a lot.
Hmm.
And if that engagement is there, these things can unfold and you
Hmm.
can be innovative in your,
Yeah,
you can sign your flywheel.
yeah,
But as soon as that engagement starts to wane and it is not addressed, it is not noticed,
yes,
it can be a slippery slope on what happens then when your talent starts to slip away.
yes. Well, and I think that connects to the structure and the way you make decisions, the way you communicate the vision, the why. Like, if you're working with humans, the why is more important now than ever. And you're going to be working with humans. Like, it's just a
Sure.
question of how many. And then, I'm a big believer that organizations are going to continue to get smaller and more entrepreneurial. Like, there's going to be more drivers of innovation. I have a lot of conversations about the future of higher ed. I think there's awareness that it's the legacy model is not innovative enough. It doesn't move fast enough. So we need other forces to kind of enter into the equation. Same thing in K-12. I think there's awareness that like there's some rigidity to the historical way in which we operate, and those systems might not be able to evolve fast enough. I think that's true in the corporate sector, in the private sector. And that's where I think if you're in those spaces, you have to actually believe that the innovator's dilemma is real, that disruption happens and that legacy models lose to new models. So you really have to be experimental. You have to be changing things, seeing how things work, and then you have to figure out how to communicate that to your humans who need that sense of purpose. And that's where people need help. Like, that's where I do think the areas that you're focusing on are smart, because I do think, there's going to be more of this, not less. That's the other thing. As someone who I talk about trends a lot, 700 episodes talk about trends in education. Like, a lot of it is sort of just plus minus, like, is it a curve? Is it going faster? Is it going slower? If you look at like layoffs and like organization changes that, mergers and acquisitions, higher ed closures, like there's a lot of disruption that's going to be happening. And that's where, like myself, like mid-career, senior in what I would view as sort of like a legacy non-growth area, how do I stay sharp? How do I build those flywheels for myself to get fast and responsive and adaptive and build my profile as a thought leader? Although I hate that. I hate that language.
Mike,
How do you call yourself a thought leader?
Mike,
You know?
how do you don't even need guests on your podcast? You just covered about 20 things in as many
Well,
seconds.
I'm normally not a guest, so that's where like I said, I'm out of control. So like
Well, I wanna
We love that you're unfettered here. So
it's
I figured, Rogan. I'm trying to be like Joe Rogan drives me crazy, but like there is a level of like when you get to that level of candor in a podcast, it's really interesting to listen to or watch. So
it's
it's a very
we've been listening to the feral Mike Palmer.
exactly, it's the cold brew.
I know we have to take a break. I just wanted to say, and this goes out to Ben Kleiman. He is always one of the first among us to say he's our colleague and co-host as well. The why. The why is at the core of so many of these things that we are talking about. And you lose your engagement without answering that question. You lose your strategy without keeping an eye on it, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do this. Let's take another quick break. I do want to get a little bit into how you are helping, authors and innovators in the work that you're doing.
Sure.
A little bit, if that's
Yeah, that'd be great.
great. Okay, we'll be right back. At Harmonious Workplaces, we believe Work should provide purpose, satisfaction, and growth. We empower people to thrive by fostering environments where individuals can find meaning in their work and organizations can succeed through thoughtful, well-executed strategies. We're committed to making work better for the people who do it and the leaders who guide them. To discover how harmonious workplaces can impact your organization, visit www.harmoniousworkplaces.com and book a free 30-minute information session with one of our consultants today. Again, that's www.harmoniousworkplaces.com. And we're back. So we've been talking with Mike Palmer of Palmer Media today. And Mike, how do you help authors and innovators build their media presence and their thought leadership? I know you said you're not all that crazy about that word, but still,
Yeah.
you said it, your words.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Typically I help them through formats like this, a little less freewheeling. So like you've had the unfiltered Mike Palmer as guest, but Mike Palmer as host is closer to me as a consultant. And then also frequently I'm producing podcasts where I'm not on air. And that's where I work with folks like Elliot Felix, who's got a new book out called The Connected College. Elliot's great, disrupting higher ed. David Adams is the CEO of the Urban Assembly here in New York, a nonprofit that does like vocational and SEL schools, helping their public schools, but David does amazing work there. He's on the board of Castle. So, I typically meet people by having them as guests on my show, that we get to know each other, and then they realize they want help either with the production of their podcast. They want me to produce for them. There's sometimes where I train folks who are producing podcasts for companies, organizations, and then lots of times since I'm interviewing at the top of the food chain over there, I'm talking to a CEO or a founder or whomever, like frequently they need a little bit of help from someone who is not overly flattering and overly subservient. So I'm just flattering and subservient enough to stay employed. And I try to keep like the tone right, because frequently CEOs who are going to be going public are concerned that they're going to say the wrong thing. So I kind of full service help you think through the whole ecosystem. And then typically the starter kit is like you launch a podcast with your pilot run of say like 6 episodes. That's a pretty standard package. And then, there's a chance to just stop with that, or there's a chance to kind of pursue it more seriously if you think you're onto something. But that's kind of the standard package. And then I'm flexible, so I help people with their media strategy. I help people do research, discovery around like mergers and acquisitions. It really depends on the type of work that is out there. But, find me on LinkedIn. We should include my LinkedIn info in the show notes. So It's like find me on LinkedIn, and then Trending in Ed, Trending in Education, Trending in Ed with Mike Palmer. That's how you can get more of a sense of me and then what I do. And then, it is my why. My passion is for these conversations to be amazing all the time. And I feel like they're not always. And then I also think we're just at the beginning of a golden age of this type of media. I think of it as, why can't we have thousands of fireside chats all at once, and we all need to find our voice. So, I really love helping people with that.
Well, and is it that so many people, like you had mentioned, that these people were going to be going public, they're afraid to say the wrong thing, right? Anytime you have that fear, we've talked about that before, like the amygdala is like, we're just gonna, what was it, Cheryl? We're gonna fight, flight,
freeze, or fawn.
Or fawn, right?
Fawn.
Yeah. So.
I hadn't heard fawn. That's like your prey, right? You're like,
yeah, right. Yeah, well, it's more like you're trying to people please.
Suck up. Yeah,
sucking up.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, it's that speakerphone that you were talking about. that middle road. It's like going,
Yes.
your amygdala is so hijacked. You just want to feed that CEO every compliment.
That makes sense. Well, it's almost like a dominance response, right? Where you say like, I'm subservient. This gets back to like why I'm in business is like, there's a lot of sycophantic drift is what I think. I'm not sure we were recording when we were talking
No,
about.
we
There was
weren't, but
great stuff before we started recording. Let me tell you, wish y'all were here with us. But the sycophantic drift is this idea that AIs are becoming suck ups and
right.
to their own detriment, and then also a lot of these trends are almost like self perpetuating around AIs. So will this model just suck up to us? And then also the flip side is like, will it, when correcting for it, start to get aggressive? And, the other thing I've heard is like, if you run like psychological assessments against all the LLMs, like they're high on like neuroticism and antisocial and like they're basically sociopaths, like left because they're trained on us, and now we're trying to kind of rein them in, but good luck,
Well, I did short story. I on my Chat GPT was asking it for some advice on I forget what it might. I think it was our brand. I think it was the Harmonious Workplaces brand. I
Yeah.
said, "You're a consultant. To assume the role of you're a consultant, but you're getting frustrated with me because we're not getting the results that you're telling us we should be getting."
Yeah.
And then it started to swear at me. It's like,
Yes.
just do the damn thing, right?
Right.
It's like,
They take direction.
you know what?
They take direction well, but like you have to kind of come at it like, it to me, that's where it is your executive function, like you kind of need to be thinking like this metacognition, like where do I have limits and how can this thing kind of supplement me and make me
Right.
better? But we do like to be sucked up to,
That's for sure. That's for sure. It's I just don't want my AI grooming me to have me do its bidding at some point.
Right. But I think
eventually we'll have the AI entourage, right? And we'll somehow be able to show up at the club surrounded in our AI.
that's true.
We'll just have screen.
Your avatars. Yeah, we'll be walking with, it'll be like Michael Jackson Thriller, and we're all kind of, we have our own dance crews behind us. Exactly. Exactly.
Just can't open the door for you.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, honestly, like the optimistic take that is out there that I'm appreciating is that we'll eventually get smart enough to point this breakthrough technology at the real problems that we have, including a climate crisis and including polarization, civil discord crisis. And, this technology should get better at making us have higher value human time. I think there's a lot of awakenings around, Jonathan Haidt's work on the anxious generation. He's got a new book coming out called The Amazing Generation, which I'm excited about. But like the idea that, social media and smartphones have really damaged people. If we can get out of like a death spiral, this is the optimism. If we can get out of that, it's conditional. This is the Kaplan-Elsat teacher, it's an if-then statement. But like, if we can get out of that cycle, this breakthrough could have huge pro-social outcomes, but we need to be conscious of the problems, but then solution-oriented rather than throw our hands up and say, we're screwed.
And naming it for what it is. Addiction is not too strong of a word. I mean,
100%.
I mean, this addiction to the dopamine hit.
Oh my God.
I mean,
I have a 6-year-old who's starting to play video games. So like I am watching dopamine fire right in front of me. And I'm also like teaching him, like, this is the hope, is like teaching him about this and like telling him your brain's not developed enough. So we have to stop playing hill climb after 20 minutes, but it's like, meanwhile, I'm kind of hooked on it because it's surprisingly entertaining.
And your brain is baked. You have nothing to worry about.
Yeah, but I did talk to Shalini Sharma, wrote this book called Math Mind. And she was talking about how you can raise your kids to kind of believe everyone can love math. And one of the things she said was spend time playing games with your kids. Because like if you're playing the video game with your kid, it's probably better if it's not a screen-based thing, but even let's be real. Like, you're raising a boy in the 21st century. They almost need to play video games, otherwise they're gonna get beat up. But like teaching him and like talking to him about it, and there's strategy in there, and talking to him about the strategy at 6, and then also telling him why he has to stop because he's having a meltdown, and every time he plays these games, he has meltdowns when they have to stop. Like, I would encourage people to have 6-year-olds in their lives, because it's very good for your especially if they're your kids, I guess.
Actual,
That's right.
like actual
Yes.
6-year-olds, like human 6-year-olds.
Just the curiosity. I mean, there is a lot of like the future. The future is very bright when a kid is 6 and you're trying to engage with them in that way, and there is that sense of like we all still have that. The child is the father of the man or the woman, like who you are when you're young.
Well,
In a lot.
beginner's mind, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's harmonious. Was that zen enough?
There, I think we put it in a
Totally.
circle.
Yeah.
Up,
Yeah.
up.
I love it. I love it. Cool. Well, we're just about at that time, folks. And so, Mike, how can people get in touch with you? And if there's anything you want to say about Palmer Media?
Yeah. I mean, my email is mike@palmer.media, so people can email me if they want to reach me there. LinkedIn's probably the easiest way to kind of like get a read on what I'm up to, and feel free to message me on LinkedIn. If you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn and you reference this podcast as where you've discovered me, like, I'd be happy to connect with folks. But yeah, and then Trending in Ed is the main podcast that's out there. I got a bunch of others kind of in the works. But also, folks, it is a time where kind of everybody needs to have a podcast. So y'all are on the right track, at Harmonious Workplaces. But yeah, if folks don't know how to get started and they want to talk to somebody about it, that's what I'm here for.
Awesome.
That's great.
Awesome.
And congrats on your track, your own domain at South by Southwest. It's a huge.
The podcast stage. Yeah. South by Southwest EDU. Yeah. Check us out. We normally are down there. In fact, Panel Picker is open until the end of July. So I don't know when this episode goes out. But yeah, get ready. It's always fun to be down in Austin in spring. It's kind of like a rebirth kind of thing. We've been bringing my kid down, so he might actually be on the panel this year. But like, then it becomes a kid panel. I don't know.
Oh,
We'll see.
but your kid
We'll
is no
see.
ordinary kid. He's way beyond 6.
Yeah.
Right on. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today on our podcast. Cheryl, you want to take us out today?
Oh, I would love to. Thank you, Mike Palmer. Thank you, all of our listeners. Thank you, Rich. And don't forget, make change your friend.
Thanks for listening to Harmonious Workplaces. You can find Harmonious Workplaces on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and other streaming platforms. We'd love any feedback on whatever channel you find us on. Please rate, like, and share our podcast with your network, and remember to add Harmonious Workplaces to your list of favorites to get notified about each new episode.